When a high-profile billionaire, enigmatic and untouchable, begins his day with breakfast, he never expects his life to teeter on the edge of betrayal and murder. His seemingly loyal wife has laced his meal with poison, a deadly secret hidden behind her perfect smile. But the only one who notices in time is the maid, quiet, unassuming, and fiercely protective of the men she's silently loved from afar. With every heartbeat, trust shatters, lies unravel, and dangerous desires ignite. In a world of power, wealth, and deception, one wrong bite could cost everything, or ignite a forbidden obsession that no one saw coming. This is 15-minute binge watch. One story. One obsession. 15 minutes. Let's begin. The sun had barely risen over the city skyline when Julian Carter, billionaire heir to the Carter conglomerate, leaned back in his high-backed leather chair, fingers drumming idly against the polished oak of his private dining table. The scent of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air, mingling with the delicate aroma of croissants and smoked salmon that his wife, Vanessa, had prepared. Her smile had seemed unusually bright that morning, the kind of perfect, porcelain smile that masked intentions far darker than breakfast etiquette. "Julian, you have to eat," Vanessa said, placing the plate before him with a grace that was almost rehearsed. Her eyes flickered, just briefly, and Julian, sharp, observant, and unnervingly calm, noticed the subtle tremor in her hand. But it wasn't the tremor that alarmed him. It was the cold precision in the way she moved, as though every gesture was calculated, rehearsed, and designed to manipulate. He had married Vanessa for her intelligence, her poise, and the wealth she brought into their already golden life, but marriage had not dimmed the part of him trained to read people like open books. He raised a brow, a slow, deliberate motion. "Everything okay, Vanessa? You seem different this morning." Her laugh was light, airy, and far too practiced. "I'm fine. Just wanted to make you a proper breakfast." She adjusted the tablecloth with a subtle flourish, her nails clicking against the edges in perfect rhythm. Julian's eyes flicked to the plate, then back to her. Something wasn't right. Something always mattered in his world, the tiniest deviation, the almost imperceptible signal that someone's intentions weren't pure. "Don't eat it," whispered a soft voice from the doorway. It was Mara, his maid, his silent guardian in the household chaos, standing with her apron still tied tight, eyes wide and serious. Her tone carried urgency, though she tried to hide it with a calm, composed mask. Julian's brow arched, amusement mingled with suspicion. "Mara, what are you?" But he didn't finish. The way she stepped closer, her hands trembling slightly, told him everything he needed to know. She had seen something that screamed danger. And in that moment, Julian realized, Vanessa's smile wasn't innocent. Mara's eyes darted toward the plate. "Your wife, she poisoned your food." I don't know why, but, please, don't eat it." Time seemed to slow. Julian's gaze snapped to Vanessa. The smile remained, unbroken, flawless. But beneath it, a storm brewed. A dangerous, meticulous storm. His heart beat slower, measured, each pulse attuned to the subtleties of the threat before him. He didn't panic, he never did, but the blood in his veins ran hot with the awareness of betrayal. "Poison my food," he said softly, voice calm but edged with ice. "Vanessa." Her smile faltered just a fraction, an almost imperceptible twitch, but Julian caught it. He stood slowly, towering over the table, the chair scraping lightly against the floor. Every movement, controlled. Every gesture, deliberate. Vanessa's voice was light, even sweet, almost theatrical. "Julian, what are you talking about?" "Breakfast. I just—" "Don't lie to me," Julian interrupted, his tone low, dangerous. "I know what I saw." "Mara, get the vial." Mara hesitated, panic and loyalty warring in her expression, but she obeyed. From the small, hidden compartment under the kitchen counter, she produced a tiny bottle filled with clear liquid, the faint sheen of a deadly substance glinting in the morning sun. Vanessa's eyes widened, and for the first time, her poise cracked. You don't know what you're talking about," she whispered. Julian leaned forward, close enough that the heat of his presence could have burned her. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about." You wanted to make a fool out of me, Vanessa. You wanted to end me before I even realized you were the enemy. Her lips parted in shock, then hardened into a mask of anger. You think you can control everything, Julian. You think just because you're rich and untouchable that you see everything. You have no idea. Save it, Julian said, cutting her off. Your plan failed. And now, you're going to regret it. Mara stepped closer, her presence reassuring. Julian didn't need saving, he rarely did, but the loyalty in her eyes was something he valued more than wealth or power. Together, they moved carefully, removing the plate, securing the bottle, and ensuring that Vanessa had no chance to strike again. Julian's gaze never left her. She was dangerous, yes, but dangerous was the kind of challenge he thrived on. And then he smiled, the dark, slow curve of someone who had survived worse than betrayal and come out stronger. You wanted a game, he said softly. Fine. Let's play. Over the next few days, the tension in the Carter mansion was unbearable. Julian watched Vanessa like a hawk, every movement catalogued, every interaction analyzed. She carried herself with her usual grace, but he saw the cracks forming beneath the surface, tiny, almost laughable mistakes that would have gone unnoticed by anyone else. But Julian was not just anyone else. He began to plant seeds of paranoia, subtle suggestions whispered to her, evidence of her plotting, hints that made her question her own safety. And through it all, Mara remained his silent ally, observing, protecting, and occasionally, advising in ways that Julian appreciated more than he would ever admit. Vanessa's attempts to regain control were predictable. She tried seduction, threats, and subtle manipulation, but Julian was always 3 steps ahead. The breakfast table incident had been just the beginning. He knew her hunger for power, for control, and he intended to turn it against her. One evening, Julian invited her into his study under the pretense of discussing the company's finances. Vanessa entered, her heels clicking against the marble floor, every step deliberate, every smile a weapon. But Julian didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, calm, untouchable, and watched her carefully. Julian, Vanessa began, but he held up a hand. Sit, he said simply. The command was quiet, but it carried weight. Vanessa obeyed, and in that moment, Julian realized how easily she underestimated him. She had always assumed that fear, money, and beauty could manipulate him. But Julian was made of something stronger. Something untouchable. Vanessa, he said, his voice low, deliberate. Do you know why I didn't eat breakfast the other day? She tilted her head, feigning innocence. I have no idea. You didn't like the salmon. Julian's lips twitched. I didn't eat it because I know you. I know your mind, your ambitions, your desires. And I know that love is the last thing motivating you. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't respond. That silence was telling, more than any words could be. Julian leaned forward, fingers steepled. You tried to kill me. And if it hadn't been for Mara, I might not be here today. Vanessa's hand twitched, a subtle, nervous movement. She was dangerous, yes, but she was also human. And Julian had always known that human flaws, no matter how small, could be exploited. The days that followed were a war of silent observation, subtle games, and psychological manipulation. Julian planted doubts in Vanessa's mind, suggested threats that didn't exist, and watched her unravel, piece by piece. Mara continued to be his unseen shield, ensuring that no plan of Vanessa's could succeed, often risking herself in ways Julian didn't openly acknowledge but never forgot. Then came the party. The kind of gala that the Carters were famous for, crystal chandeliers, flowing champagne, and the city's elite gathered under one roof. Vanessa had planned it meticulously, expecting Julian to be distracted, vulnerable. But Julian arrived alone, sharp in a tailored suit, eyes like steel, and a presence that commanded attention. He watched her from across the room, noting every calculated smile, every forced laugh. She was trying to weave a web of influence, but Julian had already anticipated every thread. As the night progressed, Vanessa attempted to corner him, whispering sweet threats, subtle manipulations wrapped in laughter. But Julian remained untouchable, unflinching, and in public, utterly dominant. The thrill of power surged through him. He wasn't just surviving, he was orchestrating the downfall of someone who had once believed she could destroy him. And then, the twist. Amid the swirl of champagne and hushed conversations, Mara slipped a note into Julian's pocket. Written in her precise, deliberate handwriting, it read, "She has an ally. Someone you trust is part of her plan." Julian's stomach tightened. Trust, betrayal, and secrets. He lived in a world where all three were currency, and Mara had just reminded him that even he was not immune. His mind raced, considering every possibility, every ally, every friend who could be compromised. Vanessa had always underestimated him. But now, he realized the game had changed. The stakes weren't just life and death, they were far more personal, far more dangerous. Julian's calm mask didn't falter, but beneath it, a storm brewed. And when storms hit, the damage was total, irrevocable, and unforgettable. By the end of the evening, Julian had uncovered enough to know that Vanessa's web extended further than he had imagined. A hidden partner, a secret ally, someone inside his inner circle feeding her information, plotting, manipulating. The question wasn't if he would uncover them, but when, and what the cost would be. As he returned home, alone yet fully alert, Mara greeted him at the door. Her eyes held the same fierce loyalty, the same sharp intelligence, and the same quiet warning that had saved him once already. "She's more dangerous than I thought," Julian said quietly, almost to himself. "But we'll be ready." Mara nodded, unflinching. "We always are." Julian's smile was dark, slow, and deliberate. Danger, betrayal, obsession, it was all part of the game he loved to play. And this time, he intended to win completely, leaving no one untouched, no one unscathed. Because in his world, Julian Carter didn't just survive betrayal, he turned it into power, pleasure, and revenge. And Vanessa? Vanessa was about to learn that some lessons are deadly, some obsessions unstoppable, and some men, billionaires like Julian Carter, are impossible to kill. Julian didn't sleep that night. He never did after betrayals like this. His penthouse, a fortress of glass and steel high above the city, was silent except for the faint hum of air conditioning and the occasional click of his heels pacing the floor. Mara had retreated to the guest quarters, ostensibly to rest, but Julian knew she was still alert, watching, calculating. He could feel her presence like a shadow, silent and protective, as he moved through the dark apartment, planning his next move. Vanessa's betrayal had cut deeper than he initially allowed himself to admit. Not because he underestimated her cunning, he never did, but because the poison had been so bold, so audacious, an act that revealed both recklessness and desperation. And desperation, Julian had learned, made people dangerous. The note Mara had given him at the gala haunted him. "Someone you trust is part of her plan." Julian's mind raced through his inner circle, executives, board members, even friends he had considered family. One by one, he mentally eliminated them, considering motives, opportunities, and subtle behaviors he had overlooked. It wasn't until the early hours of dawn that he realized the truth. The betrayal wasn't from a corporate spy or a social rival, it was from someone he had once called a friend. Someone who had been inside the house that morning, invisible, unnoticed. Someone who had fed Vanessa the precise timing, the exact moment he would sit down to eat. Julian smiled, dark and slow, savoring the revelation. Trust, he thought, was a dangerous luxury. But he had never been one to be naive for long. By midday, he had set his plan in motion. Vanessa, blissfully unaware that her secret ally had already been identified, continued her manipulations as though she were still in control. She had no idea that Julian was 3 steps ahead, orchestrating a web that would not only expose her but dismantle every advantage she had believed she possessed. Julian invited Vanessa for lunch, a seemingly casual meeting at the estate's terrace, overlooking the city skyline. The sun shone bright, the air crisp, and the table was set with all the trappings of luxury. Vanessa arrived, radiant and deceptive, unaware that she was walking into the eye of a storm she had begun. "Julian, you look calm," Vanessa said, her voice honeyed, designed to disarm. "I thought after the other day, you'd..." "Sit," Julian said, his tone clipped, commanding. She obeyed, like she always had when faced with his presence fully, and Julian felt the familiar thrill of control ripple through him. Mara appeared moments later, carrying the lunch, her face neutral but eyes sharp, alert. She placed plates before them, deliberately leaving Vanessa's untouched. Julian's gaze flicked to her, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. She understood. The game had entered its final phase. Vanessa reached for her fork, but Julian's hand shot out, stopping her. "Don't touch it," he said, voice low, deadly serious. "Not until we're done talking." Vanessa froze, a flicker of fear crossing her features, subtle but unmistakable. "What are you talking about?" she asked, trying to maintain composure, but the falter in her voice betrayed her. Julian leaned back, watching her like a predator observes its prey. "I know everything. The poison, your little games, your ally in my house. Every detail. And now, it's time for you to pay." Vanessa's eyes widened, and the mask slipped. For the first time, Julian saw raw fear, sharp and biting. But he wasn't cruel without purpose. Every move he made was deliberate, designed to dismantle her carefully constructed world. "You think you can destroy me?" she whispered, voice trembling. "You think I'll let you?" Julian cut her off with a glance, sharp as a blade. "You've already tried. And now, I'm going to finish what you started." The next hours were a masterclass in manipulation. Julian had not only identified Vanessa's accomplice, her closest friend, her confidant, but he had also turned the ally against her. Through subtle evidence planted, whispers, and carefully constructed scenarios, the friend began to doubt Vanessa, to question her motives. Julian watched the unraveling with detached satisfaction, each movement of his enemies playing into his carefully laid trap. Mara remained his unseen shield, silently neutralizing any risk, her presence a comforting certainty in a world of deception. Julian knew that without her, Vanessa's plots might have succeeded. With her, however, Julian felt untouchable. As evening fell, Julian summoned Vanessa to his private study, a room of glass and steel overlooking the city lights, a symbol of his dominance and control. She entered, radiant but cautious, a predator sensing another predator waiting. "You wanted control," Julian said, voice low, deliberate. "You wanted power over me. Over us. But here's the truth, Vanessa, control is an illusion, and power is mine." Her lips parted in shock, but Julian's gaze was merciless. "You thought you could poison me, manipulate me, and destroy everything I built. But I saw it all. Every whisper, every glance, every calculated lie. And now, it ends." Vanessa's friend, now fully turned, appeared at the doorway, hesitating. Julian nodded once. Mara stepped in silently, ensuring the confrontation remained under control. "You betrayed me too," Vanessa said, turning toward her friend, voice sharp with accusation. "How could you?" The friend hesitated, guilt and fear evident. She left me no choice. I couldn't. Julian's laugh was soft, terrifying in its calmness. "You had a choice. You always have a choice. And now, you've made it, for both of you." Vanessa's world, the one she had meticulously built, began to crumble. Julian's brilliance wasn't in brute force but in precision. Every ally she thought she had, every secret she believed hidden, had been turned, twisted, and used against her. The confrontation escalated, tension spiking with every word. Julian's control was total, unyielding, unbroken. And as he revealed every plot, every betrayal, every poison-laced plan, Vanessa realized that the man she had tried to destroy was not only untouchable but utterly dominant in ways she could never compete with. In the final moment, Julian stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, his gaze relentless. "You thought love could manipulate me. You thought fear could break me. But only one thing matters in my world: loyalty. And betrayal. Betrayal is a lesson, a game, and now, your end." Vanessa sank into the chair, defeated, her facade shattered. Julian's calculated cruelty was tempered by justice, not malice. Mara remained by his side, a silent sentinel ensuring no further chaos. The city skyline glittered through the glass walls as Julian stood over Vanessa and her former ally, a dark smile on his lips. Every plan had been exposed. Every betrayal accounted for. And in the quiet aftermath, Julian allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. Danger had been met, deception had been punished, and control was absolute. In the following days, Julian restored the household to a tense, silent order. Vanessa, stripped of influence, retreated into a shadow of her former self, her ambitions smoldering but contained. Her ally, once loyal, had been neutralized by Julian's strategic brilliance. And Mara, ever loyal, remained the silent guardian of his life and empire. Julian understood something crucial through it all: wealth and power could protect you from the world, but vigilance, intelligence, and loyalty were the true shields against betrayal. He had survived poison, manipulation, and deception, emerging stronger, sharper, more untouchable than ever. And in the quiet moments of the night, when the city slept below him, Julian reflected on the thrill of danger, the intoxicating rush of control, and the dark satisfaction of victory. Betrayal, he thought, was inevitable, but survival, mastery, and dominance, those were earned. And Julian Carter had earned them all. The mansion was quiet once more, the danger spent, the threat neutralized, but Julian knew the game never truly ended. There would always be new challenges, new betrayals, and new intrigues. But for now, he had won. Completely. Utterly. And the lesson was clear: never underestimate the untouchable, never betray the vigilant, and never, ever poison a man who sees everything. Mara entered his study one final time that night, offering a silent nod. Julian's lips curved into a small, dark smile. "We make a good team," he murmured, voice low. Mara simply nodded, eyes unwavering, a silent promise of loyalty that no money could buy. Julian gazed out over the city, lights twinkling like distant stars. He had survived, thrived, and conquered. Danger had been met, betrayal punished, and love, well, love was complicated. But power? That was absolute. And in his world, Julian Carter reigned supreme. The story wasn't just about survival. It was about dominance, precision, and the intoxicating thrill of a game played at the highest stakes. And Julian. He always won.